Good evening, everyone. This is the webinar on a framework for immigrant liaisons, a pilot program by the New York State Youth Leadership Council. I am Sarah Alvarez, and I am interim co-principal investigator at CUNY-I, or CUNY's Initiative on Immigration and Education. I am also an assistant professor of English at Queens College City University of New York, and I am also a 2022-2023 iTalk Fellow. More importantly, tonight I have the pleasure of being the moderator for this webinar. And first, before we get started, I have a few logistical announcements to share with you. I encourage you to share your thoughts or reactions with other members of the audience in the chat window to our right, as well as Twitter. And you can tag us on @CUNY, CUNY _IIE. Again, that's @CUNY, CUNY _IIE. You may also tag us at the NYSYLC, again at NYSYLC. And second, please make sure to share your questions in the Q&A box. This guarantees that we can answer your question as best as possible. If we can do that in the time tonight, we do so. And if not, we'll answer them in the coming time. Again, just send those in the Q&A. Third and finally, I'd like to remind us that this event is being recorded and it will be posted on our website. So just keep that in mind. And for everyone who's registered and is joining us tonight, thank you very much for your time. Tonight's webinar is focused on briefly introducing and discussing the guide titled Framework for Immigrant Liaisons, a pilot program by the New York State Youth Leadership Council. It's also known as the YLC. It is important to note that this guide is the first of its kind. You will get to meet and hear from several of our members in the Immigrant Liaison pilot program, and you will get to ask questions of them. I also want to mention that in our registered list, we have the pleasure of people from the Department of Education joining us. We also know that there are a number of community organizations that are joining us, and we thank you for making the time to learn with us. We also know that a number of CUNY students and educators are joining us tonight, so thank you so much, because this makes everything that much better. So without further ado, allow me to introduce our incredible speakers tonight. First, we have with us Ariadna Silva. She's the Immigrant Liaison Organizer. Second, we have Angie Garcia. She's also an Immigrant Liaison Youth Fellow. We have Katarina Kempf. She's an Immigrant Liaison. Juan Carlos Perez, who's also an Immigrant Liaison. Jenna Queenan, who's an Immigrant Liaison Co-Coordinator. And Laura Pamplona, who's Immigrant Liaison Co-Coordinator. So with this introduction, I would like to pass it on to Ariadna for the Immigrant Liaison Program at CUNY-I. Again, CUNY's Initiative on Immigration and Education. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much. So without further ado, let me introduce our agenda for today. So first, we have our welcome and introductions, as Sarah already did. Next, we will go over the New York State Youth Leadership values. Third, what is an immigrant liaison? Fourth, we will see more on immigrant liaison experiences. Fifth, talking about youth fellows hiring undocumented youth. Sixth, supporting and funding this position. And last but not least, acknowledgements and closure. So to begin, how are we connected to CUNY-I? So the City University of New York Initiative on Immigration and Education, also known as CUNY-I, creates opportunities for educational stakeholders to learn from immigrant students, families, and educators directly impacted by restrictive immigration policies and educational inequality. The Immigrant Liaison Program was created by teachers and undocumented youth at the YLC. CUNY-I then provided funding through a grant to get the program off the ground, starting the Immigrant Liaison Pilot Program. Thus, we are one of the working groups within CUNY-I. So quickly, who is the YLC? So the New York State Youth Leadership Council is the first undocumented youth-led organization in New York. We work to empower immigrant youth through leadership, development, grassroots organizing, educational advancement, and self-expression. Our goal is to give undocumented youth the tools and space to organize and create change in our communities. So really quickly, I will go over some of our values, which begin very off the start. We are an immigrant women-led organization. We are undocumented friendly. We are a part of trans and queer movement and are queer inclusive. We believe everyone can learn and is here to learn. So continuing on to more of our values, we are youth-led, but conscious that youth have and are a part of families and include them in our work and in our space as well. We do not further criminalize nor discriminate against our community who have had interactions with police, which may have led to arrests, detentions, and or deportations. We also do acknowledge the intersectional struggles and identities surrounding immigrants, which include and are not limited to racial justice, reproductive health, sexual liberation, and religious freedom.
So what really is an immigrant liaison? An immigrant liaison is a part-time or possibly full-time position if needed at a school that's created to offer support for immigrant and especially undocumented students and their families and caregivers. The immigrant liaison position is intended to specifically support students who are dealing with experiences of immigration, particularly undocumented students and mixed status families. So hopefully at their school, an immigrant liaison can engage with various activities to support immigrant youth. These can look like dream team clubs. These can be parent nights. This can also look like providing resources in multiple languages to parents in terms of legal support, finding resources, housing, and especially to those that can't access them because of their immigration status. Ariadna will now walk us through memory lane as we watch a timeline on how this program came to be.
Thank you so much. So our work started in 2013 when the YLC started collaborating with TeachStream, a group of educators focused on and dedicated to supporting non-citizen students. So following this collaboration in October of 2014, TeachStream and the YLC hosted the first of many Youth Rise Up conferences for high schoolers and students in dream teams. Continuing on throughout 2016, the TeachStream group continued making conferences and workshops engaging more in political advocacy. This includes statements against ICE raids, interrupting a UFT Clinton rally, amongst many other things. And more specifically, in February of that same year, the TeachStream and the YLC, amongst other coalition partners, hosted a rally at the panel for educational policy with 6 demands, which included providing an immigrant liaison at every school. Later on, in March of 2019, members of TeachStream and YLC, including Maria, attended the Teach to Lead conference, which was a conference dedicated to help workshop teacher ideas. And following this workshop, both groups decided to move forward with an immigrant liaison pilot program. And then throughout 2019 and 2020, TeachStream officially joined the YLC as their educator team. And continuing on to Jenna.
Thanks, Ariadna. So in the fall of 2020, the YLC received financial support from CUNY to start our Immigrant Liaison pilot program. So members of TeachStream and the YLC spent the fall preparing for the program, doing things like creating job applications and interviewing for immigrant liaison positions. In our hiring process, we prioritized individuals who were directly impacted by US immigration systems in some way. And then in the spring of 2021, we began to work with 3 immigrant liaisons at the International High School at Union Square in Manhattan, the Multicultural High School in Brooklyn, and Bard High School Early College in Queens. And as part of their work for the YLC, the immigrant liaisons filled out weekly Google forms describing what they were doing in their school, as well as support that they needed from the larger collective. And then in the spring of 2022, we expanded to 2 middle schools, Sunset Park Prep and JS 50, which are both in Brooklyn. And on the next slide, you'll see folks who are currently involved in the program. So like I mentioned, we have 2 middle schools, 3 high schools, as well as 2 youth fellows. We'll learn more about their work a little bit later, and 2 co-coordinators. And now Ariadna is going to talk briefly about the research we did at the beginning of the pilot program to kind of identify why this position is needed in schools more broadly.
Thank you so much. So to begin, while U.S. schools from K to 12 must enroll students regardless of their immigration status, undocumented students do face many barriers, both inside and outside of schools. This ranges from challenges to enrollment, obtaining equality and equitable education, accessing school programs such as free lunch and disability service, and exploring, pursuing, and financing post-secondary career and education opportunities. So in addition to this, we found that teachers in the New York City DOE do not reflect the student body. School environments and curriculum are not culturally responsive. Communication with immigrant families and caregivers is a persistent challenge for schools, as well as schools not being transparent about their policies for engaging with law enforcement. High schoolers are not prepared to support, or high schools are not prepared to support undocumented students in post-secondary planning. So now we will continue to Juan Carlos and the work he has done as an immigrant liaison.
So I am one of the immigrant liaisons at International High School at Union Square. At our school, we have 2 immigrant liaisons, and the way we split the work is that one of us focuses on working with the 9 and 10 grade students, while the other one focuses on working with 11 and 12 graders. Together, we facilitate 2 groups. One of them is Dream Team, which is open to all students in the school, and Alianza, which is a support group targeting students from Mexico and Central America. We also work closely with student support team, and that includes our social workers, guidance counselors, to connect students with legal resources. In the past, we'll help organize legal screenings, as well as schedule workshops of Know Your Rights for students, parents, and for staff members. In addition to that, we've helped with the help of the Immigrant Liaison team, the Youth Fellows, and the other Immigrant Liaisons, we help identify summer opportunities for undocumented students through which they can get usually paid stipends. As I normally work with the 11 and 12 grades, so one of the activities I also do is I work mainly with seniors in support them through the college process and applying to the New York State GMAT. So now we're going to continue with Laura, who's going to tell us a little bit more about the different types of support that we get as immigrant liaisons.
So what does it look like to support and have this position at a school or do it as part of your district? What we do as co-coordinators for this program is hosting network meetings. That's one of our our biggest priority. Sometimes we do it in person, but this program was born post-pandemic, during the pandemic or around that time. So we have learned how to coordinate online. And these in-person or online meetings are usually compiled check-ins and getting to know you questions, because every year we have been blessed to be able to gather more immigrant liaisons, new youth fellows. So we get to know each other as we begin these meetings. We often have reflections and share outs of the work that is being done at different schools. As you heard, we have liaisons at middle schools and high schools, so the work looks very different. So being able to share what's happening at different schools help us understand what are the resources that we need to create for the program. We also do discussions about check-ins and expectations. This is based on the responses that we get on the Google Forms, but then also related to needs. And then this is when we also speak about the budget that they're given, how is the spending going, and if there's any ideas on how they want to spend it. We also, on top of the network meetings, provide the immigrant liaisons with resources. We compile a list of different resources and we put them all together in a website because we learned that Google Drive isn't the most friendly space to gather resources. So this is a website that is in continuous development. It's also one of the tasks that the Youth Fellows has taken on this year. So that's also how we support the Youth Fellows with their leadership. So it's not only about providing supports or creating these access networks for the liaisons, but also how are we supporting the development of immigrant youth, especially undocumented youth. We also have facilitated the communication between the New York State Youth Leadership Council with the Immigrant Liaisons, as this is the organization that provided the whole idea. So we try to help them with communication and get them together in order to share resources that they have that we may not have as the co-coordinators. And we provide feedback for any questions that they also may have that the Youth Fellows may not be able to respond to. And we also have amazing Youth Fellows supporting them in the program. So it's not only Jenna and me, but also the Youth Fellows with their experiences as of what is happening now, because what may have been our experiences and as someone that was formerly undocumented may not be what students are experiencing right now. So this means that we also get to foster their leadership, and because they are in high school, they have experiences that are very true to the nature of what the post-high school experience and the needs that they have for that is very necessary for all us to be aware of that. And they do a lot of advocacy work at their schools. So Angie is one of those Youth Fellows, and she's here to share her experience.
Hello, my name is Angie Garcia, and I'm a Youth Fellow here at Immigration Liaison. Part of my job is to provide legal, emotional, and professional resources that will help undocumented students navigate not only through their school life, but also through their life in general. Finding paid and volunteer internships, scholarship, need-based colleges, field trips, connecting with emotional advices, finding documentaries or books that can help students connect with their roots are all part of my job. As an undocumented student myself, who knows some of the types of hardships and mistreatment that the system has, being part of this program has helped me assist others in overcoming any obstacles and problems that life might throw at them because of the legal status. Although many people with similar background and situations as me scream for help, unfortunately to the system and to the world, our voice is just a mere whisper. Now Jenna will talk about the different ways you can fund this position at your school.
Thanks, Angie. So while the immigrant liaisons are currently financially compensated through the pilot program, through the grant from CUNY, our kind of long-term hope is that schools and New York City more broadly, the school district, will financially support this position in not just 5 schools, but every school that needs one. And so we've identified multiple ways, at least within kind of New York City Department of Education structures, that schools can use to create a position like this. And so the first is a comp time position. So if the immigrant liaison is an employee at the school who is eligible for comp time, they can get hours off from other contractual duties to complete work for this position. If your school were to start something like this, then the union leader and the principal would need to agree to create this position after reviewing it with kind of the union consultation committee. And then the school union chapter would vote through a school-based option vote. And so finally, if that position were approved by the school, then that would essentially relieve the immigrant liaison from a couple periods a week to get this work done during the day. We've found that this work takes at least 3 to 5 hours per week, ideally. So you would want to allocate about 3 to 5 periods for this work. A similar option that's not on the slides, but I think is important to mention, is the C6 option. This depends in part on how your school uses C6 options for faculty service. But at the school one of our immigrant liaisons works at, they have a menu of options the principal provides. And every year the faculty state their preference for how to use their C6 time, which is usually about a period a day. And so at that school, which we'll hear a little bit more about soon, one of the C6 options is an immigrant liaison position. Outside of this, another option to compensate this position is per session. So once again, this only works if the immigrant liaison is an employee who is eligible for per session. And once again, we recommend about 3 to 5 hours per week. And I'll just say as a side note, this comes in part because many of us who were in TeachStream early on found that we were doing some of this work for free and that it wasn't sustainable. And so part of our impetus in creating this pilot program was to try and make these positions, one, sustainable in schools, and also provide a network of support so folks didn't feel like they were kind of the only one in the school doing this work. And then the last option, which I believe a similar position was created like this a while ago in San Francisco, is a stipend. So a monthly, semester long, or yearly stipend that's equivalent to compensating about 3 to 5 hours per week of work. And the kind of reasons to consider a stipend over per session or comp time or C6 is that a stipend is a way to open up this position to parents and staff at community-based organizations who might work directly with the school. And it can also potentially create a little bit more flexibility to hire undocumented folks who kind of can work through that way. So it provides a little bit more flexibility if undocumented folks are operating as independent contractors in this case. Depending once again on where the stipend is coming from, of course. So those are kind of what we've identified. We recognize this is also somewhat specific to New York and New York City, so it might be a little bit different if you're coming from another state, but we definitely encourage folks to explore funding opportunities and think about what it might look like to create similar positions in your school, and we're definitely happy to chat more about that in the Q&A section. And so now I'm going to pass it over to Katarina, another amazing immigrant liaison, who will talk about her work and how the position was created at her school.
Hi, everyone. I'm Katarina Kempf, and I'm the immigrant liaison and a Spanish teacher at Bard High School, Early College, Queens. We started an immigrant liaison position at my school without knowing what immigrant liaisons were in late 2016. I am the coordinator of Undocu-Friendly BSECQ, a faculty, staff, and student-led organization, and the supervisor of the Dream Team, a student-led organization, both of which support undocumented immigrant students and families in my school community. You can see a photo of the Dream Team there on the slide. My position is funded by a combination of the options that Jenna named. Immigrant liaison is a C6 position, which is required service to the school. And at my school, I apply for it every year. And I earn per session for Dream Team meetings and events outside of school hours because it is a student club. In order to have immigrant liaison added to our C6 menu, I demonstrated the need for the position by listing all of the responsibilities that I fulfill for my administrators and union representative to get their support for continuing this position and making it official. In 7 years of doing this work, I found that undocumented students and families in my school have 3 main needs. One is a need for legal aid on letters or materials supporting immigration cases. Another is access to jobs and internships, especially paid ones. And a third is college application support and help accessing financial aid. So I ensure that resources are provided to the whole community and also support students and families one-on-one. So some of the ways that we've addressed these needs are that faculty and staff received a training by an NGO on how to write letters to support immigration cases. Currently, my school is promoting resume building and applying to jobs and internships for the summer. So I made sure that all students received information about opportunities that are accessible to undocumented youth. And we host a yearly workshop on the college application process and financial aid access for undocumented students and families. I also wanted to share 3 ways that we celebrate and support undocumented immigrant students and families at my school, which are our annual Day of Action for Immigrants, where all teachers incorporate themes of immigration into their classes, and the Dream Team hosts a guest speaker or NGO workshop, like a Know Your Rights training for the whole school. We also have Immigrant Voices magazine, and you can see the Dream Team members are holding the most recent edition in the slide image. And Immigrant Voices magazine is where students, faculty, and staff submit writing and art about immigrant experiences to our publication, which also exists online. I put a link in the chat. And we also have the Hope Scholarship, where we fundraise to be able to provide scholarships towards tuition for undocumented graduates so they can earn their BAs. And the second image on the slide there is our most recent event to fundraise for the Hope Scholarship. I will now turn things back over to Ariadna, who will share our call to action.
So thank you so much. While the New York State Youth Leadership Council is currently focused on implementing the Immigrant Liaison pilot program, ultimately our goal is to have the DOE create an Immigrant Liaison position in every New York City pre-K to 12 public school. Our hope is that these positions will be supported at the district level with the YLC as a consultant and through district level network meetings so that immigrant liaisons can come together to engage in professional learning, share the work that they are doing in their schools, and workshop problems of practice. So we will now have Jenna talk more about that.
Thanks, Ariadna. Yeah, so we're kind of thinking about moving into the next stage of our pilot program as we hope to expand to more schools and or potentially push the DOE to fund this position. So we'd really appreciate your support with that, just in terms of getting the word out, letting people know this program exists. I'm putting a link in the chat right now with the kind of our full guide. It is 60 pages, so there's a lot in there, more details about the work we do and have done, particularly from our first year. We're also working on kind of releasing a shorter version, about 10 to 12 pages, on how to start this position at your school with some kind of quick tips. So be on the lookout for that in the near future. And there's a full list of people we want to acknowledge in our guide. So I'll keep this a little bit shorter because we have a lot of people who've been involved in this work. So, you know, the team on screen right now is somewhat large, but imagine kind of quadrupling that. And that's the number of people who've been involved. Broadly, I think this work represents the result of many years of planning and advocacy on the part of educators and undocumented youth at the New York State Youth Leadership Council. So like Ariadna showed in the timeline at the beginning, we've been doing this work for a while. Mostly, I think we just want to name that this is a team effort and involved collaboration across multiple groups at the New York State Youth Leadership Council. I want to give a particular shout out to the YLC's Dream Team Network, which is a network of mostly high school and college dream teams, as well as some middle schools across New York City. The YLC is also the first organization to be involved in creating dream teams in the state more broadly, so shout outs to them for that. And then in terms of moving forward and next steps, if you're in New York City in particular and want to connect with us, including possibly starting an immigrant liaison position in your school or just getting involved in advocacy work, put your name in an email in the chat, and we'll reach out after this kind of webinar. I'm also going to put our emails in the chat right now. So there are two right there, teachdream@nysylc.org. So that's kind of the broader group, mostly me responding to those emails, but a couple of folks get that email. And then Ariadna's email as well. Ariadna is involved as our organizer in kind of getting the word out about this program and some of the advocacy work that we're planning on. So, and I think with that, we just want to kind of share a lot of appreciation for all of you for attending and listening to us and our work. And I'll pass it over to Laura and Sarah to get us started on answering y'all's questions.
Thank you, Jenna. I think before we get to the Q&A, I want to again name what you just said, Jenna, and mention that folks, we're really grateful you're here. It's really exciting to see stakeholders from the United Federation of Teachers. This is obviously also a labor issue, right? Thinking about this pilot program and thinking about how people's times are honored and acknowledged and paid. And so having stakeholders who can speak on behalf of the UFT and then also just teachers, educators, administrators, or see people from elementary schools all the way to high school, which is really great because we want to talk about immigration and immigrant related issues from as early as elementary school education. And I also want to name that we have a number of community organization directors and organizers who are joining us tonight. And we have youth, right? We have youth who are in high school and are asking important questions. So if Laura, if you want to tell us how do we go about this, or do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I think we could start with the questions on the Q&A box. And should I just pick whichever question?
I think one of the questions that seems to kind of resonate here in the Q&A is this initiative specific to middle school and high schools, or could people join earlier than that? And how does that work?
I don't think it's a specific because our students are impacted at all levels of education, and I would love to see what this work looks like. Students in elementary school are already talking about it. They're aware of what is happening, especially if they're in mixed status families. This is very much their reality. Not having a space to talk about it or not having the language to do so makes it difficult and makes it seem like they don't know what is going on. So I will be very interested to see what that will look like. We just recently expanded to middle schools, and we've noticed that the work is different than in high school. I think there's a lot of post-secondary urgency at the level of high school, but then in middle school is more of like awareness of self and like, what am I gonna do after this, and how can I support my family? And students are start talking about, how am I gonna support my family? What am I gonna do this summer? So I will be very interested to see. I also teach at a high school. I haven't been in elementary school for a while, so I will be interested to see what this work would look like. I think it will be more connecting with the community, more connection with families, more providing resources as opposed to directly supporting the youth. It will be more of like a community effort and like bringing parents together and providing resources directly to the community, as opposed to how we do it from students to families. I don't know if anyone wants to add to that.
Sure, I can add. I think for elementary students, I would imagine that a lot of support would be going to the parents, especially in helping parents learn and understand our school system in New York City. I think it's very complicated. And one of the things that they may need is help understanding what their rights are within the school system, what things they can access, perhaps programs around support for students who need individualized education plans, for example. Also in terms of thinking about helping them plan their next steps, middle school, high school, legal aid for families. So I would envision in an elementary school, work with students would be around sharing narratives of immigration in the classroom, making that a part of the school community and a part of the learning that happens in the school, and then also providing information and resources to families so they have access to all the things that New York City offers, all the programs that exist.
Thank you, Katerina. I think related to that question, and I think what Laura has also offered, there's a question related to accessing just the program. Like, how do students actually access an immigrant liaison? How does that work? And maybe Juan Carlos, you might want to speak to this, and maybe the youth fellows can also maybe speak a little bit to this.
I think it may look very different in each school. I mean, for our school, it just started with making sure staff knew about the position, making sure that they knew about the role and what were some of the responsibilities or some of the roles we're taking within the school. And then from that, just sharing that with students, sharing it with students through advisories. We have our school, we have an advisory set up. So making sure teachers told their advisories who was there to help them, to support them in case they had questions. And also, since we work together with the guidance and the social workers, they also sometimes would send students to us if they had questions or we needed some kind of follow-up. So it's just like many times just through the community, through word of mouth of teachers, staff, students, it was just making sure that students and staff knew about the position and students knew how to reach out if they needed help.
That's great. And maybe I think a follow-up to that is how the youth fellows see like accessing the program or being a part of it.
I was informed about this program through their social media. They posted a link saying that they needed a few students who will help with the program itself. At first, I didn't know what it was, but then I started to get to know more about the program through the website. Then I had a interview, and that's how I got here.
I'll also just add I think this is probably more true in elementary and middle schools if we were to have a program in elementary schools, but what I've noticed for our middle schools is that they try and use whatever way the school already communicates with parents to get to the word out. So one of the schools we work with has a bilingual newsletter that's sent out to parents. And at the beginning of every year, they kind of name the position, name what services they help provide, and include an email as well as a phone number for the position. And it's through that a lot of parents have contacted the immigrant liaisons at that school to get help finding particularly immigration legal support. And then I think some immigrant liaisons have kind of gone to PTA meetings. You know, if the schools do robocalls, they have one where they let parents know about it through that way. So it's also just using whatever kind of ways the school already communicates to get the word out. Yeah.
Thank you, Jenna. And I think a question that kind of follows this has to do with the relationship that you mentioned between dream teams and the immigrant liaisons. There's a question specifically that's asking what are some of the ways in which dream teams are doing activities that are connected with the immigrant liaison pilot program. So maybe Ariadna and Laura, you can speak to this.
Yes, actually, let me put it on the chat. We are currently gonna host the second Undocu meetup. The link is here. And this has only been possible this year because CUNY lifted the vaccine mandate, and also we haven't been able to get together with our dream teams from Immigrant Liaison yet. We only got together in person last November, and that was last year. So I think that a lot of awareness has to come in first of like where this program is coming from and how much does the DOE has like kept us on our own little schools, doing our own little work and like only connecting online. But if you click on the link here, you'll see our second Undocu meetup. The first one that we had, my dream team went, and I think we connected with Juan Carlos dream team. I know Jay is somewhere here on the chat that also got together with their dream team. And it was really nice because my students are very shy, but Juan Carlos' students and Jay's students are not shy. And they started coming around my table and talking to students, and they're like really excited. My dream team has gotten a little bigger this year. We're getting shirts because the dream teams at the undocumented meetup, we went and they had shirts. So everybody's like, this year we have to go back with a shirt. So it's really nice when the Dream Team Network gets to host programs in person. I think that's what, as humans, we need the most. But they have also hosted programs online. They have done like an undocu Adult 101, which is different ways in which undocu students can find jobs without having their papers and not having to navigate different like agencies. They've done programs on mental health. They've had multiple speakers. They've done game nights. So it's all through Zoom, which I know it's not our preference. And a lot of students are shy and like they just come for the games and not necessarily engage. And the Undocu 101, I think it's for everybody. I don't think it's for only students in New York. I think the hustle translates everywhere. So it's not necessary to just students in New York, I think. And we'll make it very clear, like I've done one of the Undocu Adulting 101, and I don't think my experience it's only to New York. Maybe in terms of like accessing libraries and stuff like that could be only to New York, but then I think it's pretty open to everybody. And it will help also to navigate what does this look like outside of New York in other states when it might not be as friendly, right? And so yeah, that's just a few of the things that the Undocu Network does for us. And then they also have a summer program, which if our students in the Immigrant Liaison program are part of the dream teams, they get like first dibs to the Undocu Senior Academy, YEP, which is Youth Empowerment Program. So they have that during the summer, and then our students get preferences for those. So that's really nice.
Yeah, I would like to add on and like emphasize basically the importance of the Dream Team Network. So although like different schools, obviously they have different immigrant liaisons, through the Dream Teams, they're able to connect to each other and further the network. So if, for example, if there's an issue at one school, right, and students are having difficulties with something and the liaison from that school, finds a solution to this issue, then they can later like connect to other dream teams and the network continues further on, like Laura mentioned. And we always have events that, we try to connect all the dream teams together in that way.
That's great. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Ariadna. And I think something that follows what you just talked about is the New York City and the New York State vaccination rules and mandate. There's a question specifically asking about how does that work in terms of some refugee students and new families, new immigrant families that are having a difficult time navigating the mandate. Is there anything that we can say besides what Laura mentioned, which is that it's been lifted at CUNY at the City University of New York, but that's just very recent. I don't know if anyone else wants to offer any other thoughts.
I think students are allowed to go into DOE schools without being vaccinated. And I don't know 100%, but I'm assuming that parents are not yet to be allowed without vaccination, because we hosted the both of the parent-teacher conferences online. So I'm assuming that that's still a rule, but I don't quote me on that because that's DOE policy and I'm not that deep into DOE policy, but it has made it a lot more difficult because hosting, at least I know at my school, we cannot have speakers because of the mandate. And so also having people from the outside come into the building has been very difficult. Only people that have had prior relations with the school and have come to the school in the past are allowed to come in. So I think it might be a school to school basis, which makes it very difficult for us to host programs in our schools.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think just to emphasize what Laura said, these are things that are sometimes beyond our capacity. We will try to give you a more coherent answer when we post information on CUNY-I's website, but that doesn't mean we always have all the answers, and we're not all of these different institutions that are involved, especially for the state. So we're going to shift gears a little bit and connect back to what does it mean to be an immigrant liaison. One question that Javier Diego Jacinto has raised is, would it be appropriate to say that this initiative may be an alternative job opportunity for undocumented credential students? In parentheses, via the independent contractor track. And thank you for all of your advocacy. Maybe Jenna, Katerina, and Laura can speak to this. Would you say that this is what this program is like, or is it only exclusive to that?
Yes, I think that is an option. I think it depends on how willing the school is to find a way to fund paying someone who's undocumented. In an ideal world, I think that would be who fulfills the position. I will say our criteria when hiring folks was some experience with immigration. So we hired a lot of teachers who are formerly undocumented as well as documented educators. But we also wanted folks who were already in the school building in some way and had access to students. And so I think that's something to think about and balance. I could imagine this position being, you hire a former student. I think the other way to think about paying and supporting and including undocumented students in this work is through youth fellows positions like the ones we've created. So finding kind of stipend positions to support the immigrant liaison and getting dream team networks and dream teams in the schools involved. I think all of our immigrant liaisons, I would say, are learning from the youth as much as they're supporting their youth. We kind of a big YLC value is undocumented youth are the experts in their own lives and they know what they best need. And so we try and follow that in the structure of this program. Yeah, and I think I'll leave it there if other folks want to add.
I think since we're in the topic and I just want to uplift our work, I'm going to share a link, Javier, if you're interested in more of like what's being done in terms of like providing more openings of jobs for undocumented folks around education. So this is the other working group. This is the link on the chat. It's called UndocuEDU, and I'm also part of that group. And so in this working group, we are looking into creating policy and creating videos, resources, and research around how can New York State hire undocumented educators, and why is it important for our youth to have immigrant teachers and especially undocumented teachers in their classrooms. I could go very deep into this, but I would like you to go and visit our website and the multiple videos that have been created around. You'll see some of the folks in this panel also in those videos, if you're really interested in that.
Yeah, and I think that that's a nice segue to another question that perhaps Juan Carlos and Katerina, you can answer to, which is, do you have a sample SVO that could be shared with other New York City schools? I guess the question really is asking, and this is Katie Kurdravovic asking this, it's really asking, is there other way, or is there a sample or a model that you can share with others about how you did this in your school? And because you both are immigrant liaisons, maybe you can talk a little bit about the process in which you did it in your school.
So my school is unique in that we're a prose school. So we have a different procedure than SBO. So through the prose school, we were able to put it, we actually, I should say first that it's a DOE in the contract, it says for teachers, it says that any teacher who wishes to participate in a professional activity not listed on the menu may, upon approval of the principal, select such an activity. So that's the route that we used at my school, is that the union rep and I went to the principal with this option, and with the principal's support, we're able to do that. I will send you that language in the chat and the article that's in, thanks to my union representative. And then you can go the route if you wanted to. If that doesn't work, if you don't have the principal support, you could go the route, if you're a pro school, of having it put on the menu for 5 years at a time, or as a school-based option, or an SBO, which must be annual. But I don't actually have an example of an SBO to share. I'm sorry.
Just to what Katerina said, my school is not a pro school. In the past, we've done it through Dream Team has been funded through Procession, and then the last 2 years or so it's been done through the YLC, through the funding for the Immigrant Liaison. We're exploring things for next year. We are actually thinking of we are exploring the idea of doing a composition where compository position, what Jenna was talking about earlier. So we might have something, I might have something to share later on if that actually goes through any. I know I'm trying to learn through Katerina what the way they did it at her school. We're trying to kind of figure out a way that it would be an SBO where I would be relieved of some time of teaching in order to be able to do that as a continue the position as immigrant liaison. As far as I understand right now, it might be just one period a week, or no, one period a day where I may be relieved just to work on immigrant liaison related activities. But it's something that we're exploring. In the past, it's been core session, and then the funding to the OLC, and then we're exploring things for next year. And I'm still not sure where things are going to land, depending on what the union and the union chapter agrees on.
That's really helpful. And I guess another question that we have that's really turning us back to the youth fellows. So this one's for you, Angie. What are some challenges that you face in being in this position, or that you have found in participating in this pilot program?
There are many challenges, as there are limitations to what undocumented students can do. For example, as undocumented myself, throughout my high school year, I always wanted a paid internship or to work or something. And some of the students, also are looking for the same thing. But because of a legal situation, we can't do it. So there are so many, we have limited resources in every aspect, in a lot of aspects possible. But we can, I make it work. Jenna and Laura has helped me a lot. They have experience, and that's really much it.
I would like to add on. I was a youth fellow the very first year, we ran this program. And I feel like one of the most challenging things was like finding the resources, that the liaisons needed, because I was a senior in high school at the time. A lot of the resources that I was finding for the liaisons that their students needed were also resources that I needed myself. So sometimes it was like, oh wow, like I need to help you, but I also need to help me, but I feel like that was also the beautiful thing about it, that at the same time, that I'm helping others, I'm helping myself find a lot of resources and a lot of things. And also like, again, like the networking, because I managed to network with a lot of people in the YLC. And then because of my networks with the YLC, I was also able to help people, or like the liaisons, I was able to connect both of them. And yeah, it was pretty amazing though to be able to help that way.
That's great. And I guess we're going to turn it back to maybe Jenna. And Laura, is there a way in which you can speak to, and of course, Katerina and Juan Carlos, you're welcome to also answer to this, but is there a way in which this pilot program also supports students with interrupted or inconsistent formal education? And maybe I think this is also related to a question that came up before in a different webinar about students who may be new arrivals. Like, what are some ways in which this pilot program could be supportive to those students?
I can start, but please jump in, y'all. I haven't been in, I came to this work as a high school teacher, but it's been a couple of years. So I think that the immigrant liaisons, through their position, their work, etc., often become seen as experts in the school in supporting specific populations of students, specifically immigrant and especially undocumented students. And I think that students with limited or interrupted formal education often overlap in those categories, but it's not a one-to-one overlap. And so I think the intention behind this position is to support students with kind of immigration specific issues. And so when there's that overlap, the support is there through this position. I think we're careful not to say that this position is an ESL or an ENL, English as a new language position. It is not necessarily the job of the immigrant liaisons to be providing academic support, right? That's the job of the teachers. Of course, immigrant liaisons might understand, you know, social, emotional, academic, there's so many overlaps. So I don't want to say those two things are distinct, right? We know that they all kind of merge together. And so immigrant liaisons might be doing something where they either host a workshop or bring in other folks, other organizations to host a workshop on supporting immigrant and undocumented youth in schools, how to create a school culture and a school climate that is more welcoming for undocumented youth. And then, of course, when there's overlap with students with interrupted formal education, that might be supportive in that way. I think with newly arrived students, especially, you know, right this past year in New York City with the migrants being bussed up, we've had a lot of conversations in our meetings about how to support students and families who are just coming to New York City. It's a lot of connecting to resources, a lot of social emotional support. And I think something that came up in the previous question as well that I'm really sitting with is what do we do when those resources don't actually already exist? And so oftentimes, like, the immigrant liaisons are the ones creating the fundraisers in their school. You know, some of our immigrant liaisons have tried to help their schools create stipend summer positions for undocumented students that didn't already exist, right? So a lot of this is, where are the resources missing? What can we be creative about creating together as a group, right? We're not alone in this work. I'll stop there. Y'all should jump in, please.
Just to add on to what Jenna was saying, I think it becomes a very, so this is where the immigrant liaison's job is very important, in collaboration with the student support team, with the social workers, with the guidance counselors, because together we can figure out what's needed, we can figure out where the gaps are, and we can try to come up with a plan to help students. In regards to recent arrival immigrants, my school, I'm an international high school, which works with only recent arrival students. And so together with the social work, with the guidance team, we created a plan, and we try to catch every student as they enroll in the school, making sure that they are given the resources that they need, that they might find helpful, but also make sure that they get a legal living. So it becomes very important to make sure that we are connecting with a lot of other organizations that can provide the services that we do not have in school. Like, we don't have lawyers in school. We don't have some of the social emotional resources that they might need. And so connecting with those other organizations, but we do it through the social work, we do it through the guidance team. So for us, at least the two myself and my co-immigrant liaison, it becomes more about sharing resources and focusing more on the immigration resources that we have, and like the other organizations that we can connect them with, connected to the YLC if they have questions, seeing what other, besides many of the CVOs that we connect with in terms of legal screenings and legal help are already like overbooked and have already too many cases. So seeing what other resources are there and who else we can outreach so that we can have other legal help for new arrival students.
Thank you, Juan Carlos.
Can I add just one
go
link? So this is like a one-stop webinar because I have another link if you're interested to know more about how to support immigrants in schools, refugees, new arrivals. The CUNY also has professional development, CTLE credits if you're in New York State. So I'm sending the link now. If this is something that maybe you don't necessarily need, but maybe other educators at your school or any admin that you're interested, they're hosting their second session. This is another group of CUNY who's hosting these CTLE credits. So if you're interested in learning more about that, that's the place to go.
Yeah, thank you. I think we're out of time, but I want to thank all of you for being with us tonight. I want to thank those of you who are here representing so many different places that have to do with education and immigration. I want to also acknowledge that our amazing panelists have answered just about every question. That's an unlikely kind of happening in a webinar, so thank you for that. For those questions that perhaps need more context and more information, you're welcome to visit our websites and look at all of our media. We publish all of our information and try to make it as public as soon as possible. So do look out for all of these different pieces and materials and resources. And of course, look out for the recording of this particular webinar. Thank you for joining us tonight.